Okay, how do you become non-reactive? So hard, right? So hard. It's like feels impossible because they just want to trigger you. That is their main goal. They know that if they trigger you, then they have you. That's what they want to do. Why do they do that? They do that because, well, for a number of reasons. First of all, they enjoy it. They actually enjoy it. They enjoy watching you become unglued. It's theater to them. They get narcissistic supply from it. That's like anything that feeds their ego. They know they have control over you then. They know that they still have power over you. They know that they still can get something from you, right? They know that they have that like jolly thing going on over you. If you get triggered, that's one of the reasons that they do it. And another reason, even more sinister, even more stealth, even way worse, is because they get you to do things that they can potentially use against you. And as a lawyer, I'm telling you right now, and in negotiations, it's so much worse because it's like getting arrested. Negotiating with a narcissist is like getting arrested. Anything you can and do or say will potentially be used against you. So it's so important because anything that you write, anything you put your hand to is a potential trial exhibit or is a potential thing that they're going to use against you in negotiations. So it's really important to become non-reactive in negotiation. So how do you do that? Well, one way you can do that is to know your truth. Know who you are, right? Know who you are. I love the book, The 4 Agreements. It's 4 agreements you make with yourself. And one of the agreements that you make with yourself is you don't take things personally, because the way people treat other people is always a direct reflection of the way they feel about themselves. I love the expression, you can't chase every dog that barks. I mean, you know, people are always going to be saying things. You can't take things personally. And I had this teacher one time, it was this meditation teacher, who said to me, if people say things to you, just, you know, take a listen to it and then decide, is it true? And if it's true, then clean it up. You know, do I need to apologize? What do I need to do? If it's not true, then just, you know, move on. When people are attacking you and you want to look fearless, by the way, I have a whole video on that called How to Look Fearless When a Narcissist is Attacking You. You can definitely check that out. But just know your truth, know who you are, and don't defend yourself, by the way. I have a whole video on that too. Because when you defend yourself, that's when you're being a victim. So don't defend yourself. Know your truth. Just stand in your power. And that's one way to become non-reactive. Don't defend yourself. Just state your facts. And, you know, you never explain, justify, overshare. You don't get into the trenches with them. You just know your truth. State your facts. Stand in your power. So that's number 1. Number 2 is look at things as an observer. You don't process things emotionally. You look at them as a third-party observer, almost like you're watching a tennis match or you're watching it happen. It's not actually happening to you. You're watching it. Like there's this glass shield that's happening right here and you're just seeing it happen. Oh, I just saw those words come past me. Oh, I just saw them go that direction. I saw that this person said this thing to me. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah. That happened. I see you. So I'm seeing it happen. I'm seeing it as an observer. And you can even verbalize it to them. I see that you're upset. I see that you just said that to me. And when you start to verbalize it that way, you are actually starting to observe it to them, and you're just non-reactive. So I want you to practice that right now. I want you to write, I see you in the comments below, because I want you just to start practicing, I see you, because it's almost like you're playing tennis and you're volleying it back to them. I see you. I see you. You're pushing it back. You're pushing it back to them. You're looking at it as an observer. You're not allowing it to come over to you. It's not coming to your side of the equation. Got it? You're just looking at it as an observer. You're not being triggered. You are not reactive. That's number 2. And number three is advice that I take myself all the time, every day. And that is, I never leave my thoughts unsupervised. Never leave your thoughts unsupervised. It is a constant process. What your input is what your output is going to be. Obviously, when you're at work, when you are doing things, you're going to be busy. Your thoughts are going to be whatever your thoughts are going to be when you're focused on something else. But when your thoughts have those times of being able to just think whatever they're going to think, I think we think like, 40 thoughts a minute, 100 thoughts a minute, whatever it is. And a lot of times our thoughts go toward the negative if we don't train them properly. So train them properly. So how do you do that? You make sure that you keep your vibrational level high. Good thoughts, positive thoughts, joy, happiness, contentment, peace. Those are high vibrational thoughts. You want to make sure you keep them high. So how do you do that? You listen to audiobooks, you listen to YouTube videos, you listen to podcasts, whatever it is that you need to listen to make sure that those thoughts are going where you need to go. And you can listen to books that are going to keep you motivated, keep you positive, keep you energized, keep you feeling good, whatever it is, whoever makes you feel good, whoever makes you feel like I'm ready, I'm good, this is great. Because thoughts are just thoughts. Those are just beams of energy that are firing off in your brain. That's all they are. And you can rewire them to be whatever you want them to be and create whatever you want. And you can literally manifest whatever life you want to manifest. You just got to reprogram the thoughts. Okay, so that's number 3. Never leave your thoughts unsupervised. And that's how you start to become non-reactive to people, and how you can start to become not triggered by those crazy toxic people in your life, which is super critical when you are dealing with them, when you're negotiating with them, whether it's a formal negotiation or whether it's just a conversation and you're just communicating with them on a daily basis. Before I tell you the word that narcissists just absolutely cannot stand, you have to understand the psyche of narcissists. So narcissists are actually people that just have no inner sense of value. They were built by something that happened in their childhood. They were traumatized, something that happened that caused them to feel like the world is a scary place. They feel like they're in survival mode at all times. And so they feel completely empty inside. So they're constantly looking for validation from external sources. And so it's either going to be getting their self-worth from what I call good sources, and I say good in sort of a tongue-in-cheek sort of a way, because nothing is really good or bad. I mean, we kind of put these values on things, but, meaning like cars or prestige or things like that, they think it's good, right? They look toward these sources of what we call narcissistic supply. They want it to look good. I mean, it's always about this sense of what looks good on the outside. And they kind of lead these sort of double lives. I actually have a whole video on that, why narcissists lead double lives, which you can definitely check out if you'd like. But they have this inner life, and then they have this outer life, and they have this inner self, and they have this outer self. And the inner self is this scared little person, this little inner child. And then they have this outer self. And the inner self is this no value, this little scared little thing that they don't want anybody to see, but they're very, very insecure inside. And so they want to control you at all times. That's the thing that they absolutely feel like they need to have at all times, is control over you. And that's the thing that they're going for from the beginning, is to try to get this control over you. That's why they love bombing you. That's why they do this idealization phase. They try, from the beginning, they're looking to groom you to see if you're going to be a good source of supply. That's why they target you. Everything is about that. It's kind of like exhausting. I would think it would be exhausting for them. It's always about juggling this outer source of supply and then this inner source, like trying to devalue you and push you down. It's this constant back and forth of making it look good on the outside and keeping you under control and making sure that it's all, exactly the way it needs to be, and not allowing themselves to be exposed. And, they've got this whole double standard thing, where you have to be a certain way and they don't have to adhere to the standards that they've set for you, and all that sort of thing. The one thing that they absolutely don't want to have at all, the one thing that they absolutely cannot handle, is to be insignificant, is to not matter, because they have to have that supply. Like for somebody who has an inner sense of value, they can actually say, not one drop of my self-worth hinges on what you think of me. Not one drop of my self-worth comes from anything that you say about me or anything that you do. If you say good things about me, that's really nice. Thank you. If you say bad things about me, oh well, too bad. Sorry that you feel that way. If you don't think about me at all, okay, fine. Like if somebody feels whatever about me, fine. If you have self-worth, that's a person who has self-worth, okay? If you don't have self-worth at all, and you're dying for somebody to feel something, to have self-worth, then you need that attention and you need that supply. Then what's the worst thing that somebody could think about you? What's the worst thing that they could do? What's the most hurtful thing that they could do? Is to be like, you don't matter, whatever, right? You don't matter, whatever. The worst thing they could say is any word that means the equivalent of whatever, or sure, or fine. It's the equivalent of the shrug of the shoulders, the disinterested. I'm no longer sucked in by you. I'm no longer triggered by you. I'm no longer interested in giving you supply. That is the worst thing for them. Anything that means that you are no longer going to give them the fuel that they so desperately want, that to them is the number one thing that they absolutely cannot stand. The apathy, the resignation. It's not no, by the way. It's I'm no longer going to feed your hunger. So I want you to put that in the comments. Don't feed the hunger. Do not feed the hunger. And, I do have a video on what narcissists respect the most. Definitely check out that video. They want you to feed the fire. That's what they're looking for, but don't feed the fire. Don't feed the fire. That's what they're looking for. As long as you don't feed that fire, because they want you to be triggered. That's what they're looking for, especially in negotiations, especially if you have a case going. They use that against you. I always say negotiating, when you're negotiating, you're in a case with a narcissist, it's like getting arrested. Anything you say or do will be used against you. Don't trigger them. Don't give it to them. Don't fuel the fire. So, whatever, that's the worst word for a narcissist. That's the number one word they cannot stand. Whatever, fine, okay. Any of the equivalent of the shrug of the shoulders, that's the worst. Which is the best for you? 6 ways to scare a narcissist out of your life. It's time to scare a narcissist out of your life. They usually have you running scared, right? Because that's what they want to do. They want to scare you. They want to intimidate you. They want you to be the one who's feeling nervous and scared all the time. Okay, why do they do that? Because they get narcissistic supply from it, right? So the first thing that you can do is, number one, not be intimidated by their behavior. Not be intimidated by their behavior. You know why? Because they're actually way more afraid of you than you are of them. That's the not so secret. They're the scared little person inside, and they don't want you to know it. So the minute that you're not intimidated by their behavior, they're like, hey, what's going on here? Because there's certain types of people that the narcissist respects. And I want you to check out my video. This is the only kind of person that a narcissist respects. Check out that video and you will see what I'm talking about. So number one, don't be intimidated by their behavior, and you will start to see how things will shift. I know it's scary at first, but you will see. And closely related is number two, start not giving in to their demands. When you start not giving into their demands, you're starting to shift the dynamic. You're starting to not be conditioned by them anymore. What happened was, at the beginning of the relationship, they started conditioning you. They started to say, hey, here's how things work. They started to do things. They started love bombing you. They came along. They were perfect. They were wonderful. Rockets were going off. Things were lining up. They were soulmates to you, whether it was a business relationship, whether it was a personal relationship, either way. I was in a business relationship with a narcissist. It was the same thing. Everything was wonderful. Everything was perfect. Everything was amazing. And then they start devaluing you. Then they start doing things, whether it's a covert narcissist, whether it's a grandiose, it doesn't matter. They start doing these little things where you go, oh, what's going on? That's when they're starting to condition you. That's when they start going, oh, let's see how they do. Let's see what happens here, right? And when you start not giving into those demands, you're conditioning them back. That's when you start pivoting. That's when you start shifting that dynamic around. Don't give in to their demands. Number three is start putting boundaries into place. When you start putting those boundaries into place, again, you're starting to turn that ship around so that now you're starting to point the guns at them instead of having the guns be pointed at you. And I have a whole video called 5 Ways to Set Boundaries with Narcissists. You definitely want to check that out if you want to know how to set boundaries with narcissists. All right. I want you to put in the comments right now, not giving in, because that's what you're going to do right now. You are not giving in, right? You are changing how things are going to be. From now on, there's a new game in town. Another thing that you do with them is, this is number 4, you're going to focus on the facts. When you focus on the facts, they can't take that, especially when they're trying to gaslight you all the time. When they're constantly trying to go, this is what happened, no, this is what happened. And you go, I saw it with my own eyes. I heard it with my own ears. I know what happened. This is what happened. And you don't get emotional. And this is actually number 5. Withhold emotional reactions. Emotional regulation is key. You focus, number 4, focus on the facts. Number 5, do not get emotional. Don't allow yourself to be triggered. When you do that, you seriously start to scare them out of your life because you are no longer allowing yourself to be triggered by them. And when you do that, that's when you're cutting off that supply source to them. And that's when you're really going to scare them out of your life. Because the bottom line is that food, that oxygen, that supply source, when that main line is still running toward them, that's when they're still going to be coming at you. That's when they still want you. And as long as they're getting some food source, that some oxygen, some supply source from you, they're still going to come around. If you're still intimidated, you're still fearful, you're still giving in, you're still allowing, that's giving them some reason to come around. Okay. And especially if you have an emotional reaction, that emotional reaction gives them supply. It also gives them fodder for things that they can use against you, especially if you have some kind of a legal case going on with them. They will use that against you. They will say, look, there's the crazy one. There's the one. While they sit over there all cool and calm and collected. They use that in text. They use that in emails. They use witnesses against you. Don't allow it. Okay? Go scream in your pillow, go cry in the shower, go talk to your therapist. You know, we actually have a partnership with BetterHelp.com. Go to BetterHelp.com/Rebecca Zung. If you need help and support, we do receive commissions from that, but we only recommend services that we trust. Whatever you need to do to not have an emotional reaction, do that. Okay? That's number 5. Number 6 is cut them off. Cut them off. Cut off that supply source completely if you can. And then don't allow it back if you can. Or if you have to have one form of communication, have it be email or some other way that you can track the time and date stamp. You know, if you have children, then the apps are good, you know, the ones that you can track. Because you want a record of everything. You want something that you can track because they will use it against you. They will manipulate things. 100% they will. Anything you say or do will be used against you. Let's talk about how to shut down narcissists and how to shut down gaslighting. First of all, they're constantly trying to make you think like you're the one who's crazy, right? Let's talk about what gaslighting is in the first place. Gaslighting is a form of just trying to make you think like you're the one who's crazy. It's a way that narcissists use to get control over you. Why do they do it? Well, because they want to, first of all, make you feel devalued. And by the way, they didn't attach themselves to you. I say this so many times, but in case you're brand new here, in case you're brand new to me, brand new to my world, I think it's really, really worth repeating. Narcissists did not attach themselves to you because you have so little value. They attach themselves to you because you have so much value. They're not stupid. They don't, even though they're constantly devaluing you, constantly trying to make you feel small, they didn't attach themselves to you because you have so little value. They attach themselves to you because you have so much value, because they want to be able to suck that value for themselves. It makes them feel more powerful
to devalue something that has so much value. Doesn't that make sense? Think about it. If they're constantly devaluing something that has value, then that bolsters them. They feel better about themselves because they're pushing you down. They don't feel better about pushing something down that they think is low. What value do they get out of that? Think about it. That's why they devalue you. They devalue you because they get off on pushing somebody down that they already feel like is higher than them or at least equal to them, because then they can like climb their way over and push down something that they already think has value. So think about that. So why do they gaslight? Gaslighting, for one thing, is a form of trying to make you think that you're crazy. They do this to gain control over you, to destabilize you, to make you think that you're crazy. I mean, that's one of the things, one of the reasons. Another reason that they do it, frankly, is to push attention away from themselves when you're trying to hold them to account for something. If you're trying to say to them, hey, I caught you doing something that you weren't supposed to be doing or that you were supposed to be doing, I think these text messages look suspicious, then they'll say, oh, no, that's not what you're seeing. Or you were supposed to do this work and you didn't. Oh, it wasn't me. It was somebody else. Somebody else was supposed to do it. Or that's not what we agreed upon. We agreed on this. And so they do it also not just to make you think you're crazy, but also to project and deflect responsibility off of themselves. So there are a number of reasons that they gaslight, not just to make you think you're crazy, but also to project and deflect responsibility off of themselves, to devalue you, to destabilize you, to build up their own sense of self-esteem. So there's a number of reasons. And by the way, so that you can remember what the word gaslighting means, I'm going to tell you how it originated. The word gaslight actually came from, it was a play originally in the 30s. It then was made into a movie called Gaslight. It was of the same name. And in that, the husband was trying to make the wife think that she was crazy. And so what he was doing was blowing out these gas lamps. And yeah, I think it was set in like the 1800s or something. And she would say, oh, wasn't that just lit? And he would say, no, it wasn't. And she would say, oh, I'm pretty sure that was just lit. And he would say, no, it wasn't. And so, therefore trying to make her think that she was crazy, right? And I think, in the end, obviously it didn't work or something to that effect. I don't know. I've never actually seen it, but that's where the term originated. Okay, so that's how you can remember where the term came from. Now, coming back to you, when you are trying to have a conversation with this person and they're projecting, deflecting, lying, denying, whatever it is that they're doing, and they're belittling you, making you feel small, constantly victimizing you, constantly eroding at you, eroding at your self-esteem, eroding at your brain, death by 1,000 cuts, pick. And it can get at you, regardless of whether you are in a business relationship, a personal relationship, a work relationship. They're your boss, your coworker, your family member, whether it's your mother, your sister, your brother, whoever it is, your spouse, It eventually erodes away at you. It's abusive. It's psychological abuse. It's emotional abuse. It's spiritual abuse. It erodes away at your soul. You do start to question your mind. You do start to question your sanity because it's happening on a daily basis sometimes. And eventually you do start to go, did I say that? Is that how that went? And so, you do start to think, I need to start keeping notes. I need to start writing down, did I say that? So, you do need to start taking notes. You need to start a journal. You need to start documenting if you had a conversation with the person, confirming for sure. But in this particular episode, what I want to focus on specifically are phrases that you can use to hit back in a way that allow you to maintain your dignity and not necessarily have backlash, and start to gain respect, put boundaries in place, start to shift the dynamic, start to pivot, because you need to stop the conditioning. You need to start pivoting. You need to start walking forward, not backward, because that's the only way that you'll be able to start feeling your power, start feeling more in control, and start being able to separate yourself from this person and start being able to stop the whole crazy toxic situation and being able to finally break free, because your soul knows, those little whispers that you're hearing, the fact that you found this episode, whether you're listening to it on a podcast, whether you're watching it here on YouTube, wherever it is that you're consuming this right now, you found this by divine intervention because your soul knows. Your soul said, it's time. The whispers came knocking, and your soul said, it's not okay anymore. Your soul knows that it was born for more, that you were born for more, and it's waking up and realizing that it's time. What we're going to do now is I'm going to give you some phrases that you can start to use to shut down that gaslighting. And here's how. So you can start to say things like, we remember things differently. When they start to say things like, we had agreed that this is how it was going to be, remember? You're going to say, we remember things differently. And you don't need to say it in a tone. You don't need to say it loudly. You don't need to scream. You don't need to yell. Never put your emotion into it. You just say, we remember things differently. Number 2, you can say, if you continue to speak to me this way, I will no longer be engaging. And then you can walk away if they continue to speak to you in a manner that has rage, that has anger, that's disrespectful. You don't need to be in a situation where you are going to continue to be disrespected. And if they scream, if they say, don't walk away from me, you're walking away, that's disrespectful, whatever it is, that's okay, because they are disrespecting you by screaming, by yelling, by disrespecting, by devaluing, by degrading, whatever it is. Just say, I'm no longer engaging, and walk away. That's number 2. Number 3, you can say, I hear you, and that wasn't my experience. It's sort of the same thing as we can agree to disagree. You know that old saying, we can agree to disagree. It's something along those lines. Or you just say, I hear you, and that wasn't my experience, or that isn't my experience. Something to that effect. I do have a whole video, by the way, on words that destroy narcissists. It's actually not exactly what you might think. It's actually words that will very much permeate narcissists, but help you maintain your own self-respect. I highly recommend that you check out that video, Words That Destroy Narcissists. Next one, very similar, to, if you speak to me this way, I'm not engaging, just simply say, I'm walking away from this conversation. If it gets too heated, if it gets too demanding, if it gets too disrespectful, if it gets to a point where it really is nothing but lying, denying, projection, deflection, full on interrupting, rage, abuse, or certainly anything where you feel that your safety is of concern, absolutely walk away. Absolutely get out of that conversation. Next, say, I'm not interested in debating with you. Just say, I'm not interested in debating with you. I'm not interested in debating what happened with you. You can just say, I'm not going to have this particular conversation with you. We can talk about other things. You can just let them know I'm not going to have this conversation with you. If they will continue with a particular position that is very clearly different than the one that you know to be true. In other words, let me just tell you this. If you saw it with your eyes or heard it with your ears, just know that it happened. Trust your senses. I want you to write that in the comments below right now. I trust myself. I trust myself. I want you to start feeling that. I trust myself. And start to feel like you're going to believe it. I trust myself. The next one is you can start to delineate what you will speak about and what you will not speak about. You can say things like, I'll speak to you about A and B, but I'm not willing to speak to you about C. Or I'll speak to you about C, but I'm not willing to speak to you about A and B, or whatever it is. You know, I mean, you just have to be clear about what you're going to be willing to speak about, because otherwise you just are going to get into this conversation that you just don't want to be in. In other words, you just want to make sure that you're making it clear to them you don't believe their lies anymore. And just don't go down the path. Don't allow them to lead you down the path. All right, so I'll speak to you about A and B, not willing to speak to you about C, or vice versa. So those are some ways that you can start to shut down gaslighting immediately.
So, all right, let's talk about how to flip the script on narcissists. They're always trying to gaslight you. How do you gaslight them? All right, so first of all, what is gaslighting? Gaslighting is a term that psychologists use. It is a specific type of manipulation where the manipulator is trying to get someone to think, or maybe it's even a group of people, to think that they're crazy. Basically, they're trying to get them to question their own reality, question their own mind, their own memory, their own perception. I have been the recipient of this. I've dealt with them. I've been the victim of covert narcissists myself, not as a husband, fortunately, thank God, but business relationships, and we've had a family member, and it's awful. It is a really, really horrible, horrific, horrible, traumatic experience. It is terrible. It comes from the new movie Gaslight. I think it was also a play where in that particular movie, the husband was trying to make the wife think that she was crazy, and he was blowing out the gas lights, and she was like, oh, wasn't that just lit? And he would say, no, it wasn't. And that's where it comes from. So, and if you want to know more about the 8 key narcissistic gaslighting phrases that narcissists use, you can definitely check out my video on that topic. So what I'm going to do here, though, is give you some ways to not technically have you make narcissists think that they're crazy, or actually manipulate them in such a way where you're, having them question their own mind or whatever. But I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator, where you're kind of stopping them in their tracks, where you are, shutting them down. It's a way for you to protect yourself and create your own boundaries. And It helps you in the negotiation process for sure. And if you are so ready to shut them down, give me a shut them down in the comments right now. All right. So one of the things that you're going to do this is especially really effective when you start to see them getting emotional. And you will see this happening, especially when negotiations start to get underway and when the relationship starts to break down, whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship, and you are starting to go into that discard phase, that last kind of phase of a narcissistic relationship. That's when, it starts to be war. That's when you're either for them or against them. With a narcissist, it's always a black and white kind of a situation. And if you're against them, then you become public enemy number one for sure. So they will start to get very, very emotional. A lot of times that narcissistic injury gets triggered, that narcissistic rage comes flying out, and they can get very emotional. Sometimes they get emotional because they're also trying to trigger you. By the way, they do it purposely just to get a rise out of you because they want to trigger you. So sometimes they will say things because they know that there are certain areas that they can push on. For example, like if you've always tried to be a really good parent, a really good mom, a really good dad, they'll say, oh, you're a really neglectful parent. Or if they know that you've done a very good job in business and being meticulous with money is really important, they'll say, oh, you're a spendthrift or you're terrible with money. They'll say things that they know are not true so that you'll go, oh, how can you say this? So be very careful about, taking that kind of bait, by the way. But so one of the things you can do when you see them getting emotional, or you find yourself getting emotional, is you can respond with things like, I understand that is how you're seeing it. So you didn't disagree with them. You just say, I understand that is how you're seeing it. So, that is just an observation that you're making. All right. So that's one of the ways. The next thing that you can do is to get them to keep talking. This is a great way of also getting them to give you more rope to hang themselves. They are great at that. A lot of times people don't want to give narcissists more rope. Oh, don't let them get away with anything. Don't give them more. But if you give them more rope, most of the time they will hang themselves. So let them keep talking. Give them more rope. Say things to them like, tell me more about that. Why are you thinking that? It will fluster them, and they will start to realize sometimes how they are talking in circles and how maybe that what they're saying doesn't necessarily make sense. And what they are saying is kind of maybe not necessarily not in their best interests. And so it can sometimes be a good thing. And especially if you can get them to do it in writing, even better, because, all writing becomes a potential trial exhibit. Good advice for you too, to remember. Okay, so that's the second thing. And the next one, the last one is actually my favorite one because it is a great way to twist things around. And this is always ethically manipulating the manipulator. They are very, very good at manipulating. And this is just you ethically manipulating the manipulator. And this one is, I agree with you. So if they say things like, you are horrible with money or whatever, you can say something like, I agree with you that is your opinion. I agree with you that we are not going to come to a conclusion on this today. I agree with you that we are probably never going to see eye to eye on this. Something like that, so that you're not agreeing on anything here. You're just saying, I agree with you. And then the rest of your statement is not agreeing to anything that they're saying. But the beginning of what you're saying is, I agree with you. It really kind of confuses them, because you're saying I agree with you, but then the rest of what you're saying is actually not saying you agree with anything. And it can be very confusing for them, because they heard something, but then what is it that you actually said? So it is a really great way of gaslighting the narcissist, gaslighting the gaslighter.
Anyway, let's talk about those 5 kick-ass responses to those text messages, those comebacks, the ones you can, you're always trying to think of. So here's the thing. When you're dealing with narcissists, you can have a framework, because they're trying to trigger you at all times. I mean, when you get those emails, those texts, you want to come back with, well, are you saying that, when they say, oh, you're a terrible mother, or you're awful in business, and you want to defend yourself. That's the natural tendency as people. And they go back and forth between, their love bombing and those text messages, and they're trying to devalue and destabilize you. And it's just constant. And if you want to know more about the various stages of a narcissistic relationship, by the way, you can check out my videos on love bombing, devaluing, and discard. I have one for each. You can go check them out if you'd like. But really, the back and forth is actually way more toxic than someone who's just toxic all the time. And here's the thing. If you're no longer for a narcissist, then they're just going to assume that you're against them, because they only think in terms of black and white. And if you're not for them, then you are public enemy number 1. You're definitely against them. So within that framework of all of this toxicity and craziness, you've got to have a way to respond that's going to allow you to continue to maintain your power, so that you don't get triggered, and so that you continue to control the conversation and control the way that you respond, so that you don't do something that you might regret. Because remember that every text, every email, everything you put your hand to, anything you write, whether it's a social media post or whatever, is a potential trial exhibit. So remember that. Always keep that in the back of your mind, because they will try to trigger you. They will try to get you to put something in writing that they can screenshot or print out and use against you in whatever way they can. So be really, really careful about that. All right. So the key to doing this, the key to responding to them, is to look at it as if you're completely disengaged, almost like you're a third party, like you are watching this thing and you're like, oh, they're, like watching a tennis match. Oh, they just hit the ball. Oh, that person missed it. Oh, there they hit it again. Almost like that. You're keeping all of your interactions like as brief and unemotional as possible, because that way you don't get triggered. I mean, you're going to want to defend yourself. You're going to want to say things that are going to be like, proving things, like you can prove them wrong or whatever. Don't bother. You're never going to do it. You're never going to prove them wrong. You're never going to have closure. And I have way more on this, by the way, on my video called I Was Dead Wrong. You should definitely check that out as well, which is about my own thing of how I figured out what I was dead wrong about when it came to narcissists. But you want to just be careful about that. So here are some ideas for comebacks for you, all right? And these are also, by the way, because I am a lawyer, great trial exhibit as well, okay? So let's say you get a long email and it has all kinds of stuff in there about you're a deadbeat parent, you're worthless, you're this, you're that, and all of these long things. What I want you to say instead is this: I am in receipt of your message. I deny your allegations, and you can pick up Johnny at 3 p.m. on Wednesday. You select the one thing in the email that you have to respond to. You respond to that without emotion. You never explain, justify, or overshare. Remember that. Never explain, justify, or overshare. And you just respond to that. And everything else, you've said you've received it, you've denied it, and that's it. You don't need to go point by point. You're not going to get them to see your side. It's not going to happen. but you've done what you needed to do to preserve the exhibit for trial. Got it? Okay, so that's number one. Number two is thank you for sharing your thoughts. Have a wonderful day. So again, you've acknowledged, but you see how you're just keeping a distance between yourself and them. You're keeping your emotions out of it. All right. So I want you to write this down in the comments right now. Never explain or justify. Put that down in the comments because that way you will remember to start doing that. Okay. So never explain or justify. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Number three is it sounds like you are very upset. Let's discuss further when you've had a chance to calm down. You see how you are observing them being upset. You are not upset. Now, they may say all kinds of stuff back, like you're this, you're that, whatever, and you're the one who's upset, and you're the one who's yelling. You can just say, I agree, we need to take a break. Looks like you're very upset. Happy to talk when you've had a chance to calm down. Or you can even say, well, we both had a chance to calm down, who cares? But you just observe their behavior. Observe their behavior to them. It's not you, it's them. You're looking at them having that behavior. All right, so that's number three. Number four is you are entitled to your perceptions, thoughts, and beliefs, just as I am. You know, you're entitled to have that opinion. One of the things I love to say is I agree with you, but you can say it like you're not even really ending up agreeing with anything. You can say, I agree that's your perception. I agree that that's what you think. You see, like they hear you say, I agree, but you haven't agreed with anything. You've just said you're entitled to your perceptions. You are entitled to your beliefs. You are entitled to your thoughts, just as I am. We both are. And it's just like, it doesn't add fuel. It doesn't give them that narcissistic supply, which is what they're after. Okay. And the last one is no, thank you. I mean, you don't even have to say anything more than that, but you know, thank you for whatever it is that you're saying or offering or doing. And you could just say, no, thank you. I'm not engaging with you. So all of these are ways that you can keep your emotions out of it. You stay not triggered. You are creating trial exhibits and potentially proof exhibits down the road that might help you and also help you preserve your sanity. Okay.
All right. You're over there. You're going like, I don't know how to create boundaries. You want boundaries that will actually work. I want to help you make boundaries that'll actually work. I'm going to give you 5 ways. So you're going to want to watch all the way till the end so you get all 5. So number 1 is you got to stop explaining yourself. Once you create those boundaries, you want to try to tell them why you're creating boundaries. You want to say to them, well, I needed to do this because, and you know, it's you're this and I that, and because that's when you leave yourself open. That's when they start to do that thing that they do, that Svengali thing that they do on you. And you can't go there with them. You can't leave yourself open. You can't listen to their crap because they know how to do that thing that they do with you. I'm sorry, but you know, they've been conditioning you from the beginning. They know how to read you. They know how to trigger you. They know how to get under your skin. The first thing you have to do is once you say, these are the boundaries, you know, we're going to use one form of communication. That's it. You don't need to explain yourself or whatever your boundary is. You're going to pick the kids up at the curb, or you're going to, you know, speak to me in a certain manner, whatever it is that your boundary is, then you don't need to explain yourself. That's it. This is my new rule. I don't need to tell you why. That's the new thing. So stop explaining yourself. That's number 1. Number 2 is stop making yourself look vulnerable. Don't make yourself look weak by putting yourself out there, by saying, sorry, I had to do this. By making yourself look vulnerable, then that gives them that opening. When you make yourself look vulnerable, it gives them that opportunity to come in and counts. So don't cry in front of them. Don't look weak in front of them. You can scream in front of your pillow, whatever it is, but don't lose control. Don't get emotional. Don't allow them to trigger you. Seriously, just don't. No emotion. Stick to the boundaries. So those are items 1 and 2. These are just things that you have to do in order for them to really start to respect you. And if you really want to know who a narcissist respects, I have a whole video on the only person a narcissist respects. I would definitely check out that video if you really want to know who a narcissist respects. And the next one is to stop looking for what I call attunement or getting the narcissist to like agree with you, or to stop getting them to like see your side, or getting the narcissist to see why you're doing what you're doing, acknowledge you, and say, don't you see why this is going to work for us? Don't you see why this is better? Don't you see that this is going to be better all around for everybody? This is going to be best for both of us. If you're trying to get them to see reason, you're not understanding that they just don't think the same way that reasonable people think. Their brains just don't operate the same way. And the faster that you can get yourself to understand that, the faster that you'll be able to heal, the faster that you'll be able to protect yourself, the faster that you'll be able to move on, the faster that you'll be able to get to be on the offensive. There's so many things that'll work better for you once you understand that. Just don't expect attunement. Don't expect them to agree with you. So stop looking for agreement and acknowledgement. If you want a boundary that's going to work, just stop looking for that, because it's not going to happen. You're never going to get them to see your side. I want you to just put, I will stop now. I will stop now. I want you to put that in the comments, because that's your cue to yourself to understand that you're going to stop explaining yourself. You're going to stop looking vulnerable. You're going to stop looking to get them to see your side, all of those things right now. The next thing is that you're going to stop expecting them to change, because they're not. They're not going to suddenly get to be better people. They're not going to suddenly future fake you into, oh, I've changed, I'm better, it's going to be different now. It's not. You probably have heard it a million times, they're not going to change. All right. So if you want to have a boundary that's going to work, understand that they can't come back and say, oh, let me cross the boundary because this time it's going to be different. It's not. And number five, if you want to set a boundary that's going to work, stop excusing them. Stop excusing them. Stop excusing them because they had a bad childhood. It's not that bad all the time. These are what I call like red flags that you look past, that you should like look for in yourself, because you kind of defend them for them. Then you make it easier for them in that sense, so because you're excusing them. And so if you want to have boundaries that work, stop excusing them. So those are the 5 things that you can do if you want to have boundaries that work. Stop explaining yourself. Stop making yourself look vulnerable and being emotional in front of them. Stop looking for attunement or agreement. Stop excusing them. Stop expecting them to change. and stop excusing them. I'm going to give you 5 ways to make sure that you beat a narcissist in court. So you're going to want to make sure you stay till the end. You're going to want to make sure that you save this video. You're going to want to make sure you share it out. You're going to want to make sure that you go ahead and watch it over and over again, because I'm going to give you all the ways to make sure that you beat a narcissist in court. Okay. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to remember the acronym, knock them dead. All right. So DEADD. So 2 D's, but DEADD, knock them dead. So the first D stands for document everything. And I mean everything. You know, you're going to want to journal everything. You're going to want to document everything. In my Slay program, I actually have 12 different things that you're going to want to be documenting, but you're going to want to document everything with regard to finances, to your children, if you have children, anything that they do that seems out of the ordinary. I know it's a pain, but you know, if you have a notes app or something, just note it, because you're not going to remember. But you know, even if it's crazy, oh, I don't know if I should write that down, but you know, you just never know. And there's many different ways that these things come into play. So you will want to make sure that you document everything, whether it's a business case or a family law case, or it's against a business partner. Maybe it's a case against an employer or something like that. It always is something that you're going to need to be doing, is documenting. Whether it's a timeline form, you end up needing it for the statutes to prove different elements of a statute. You definitely need documentation. I also have a podcast where I ended up interviewing one of the people who use my Slay for Biz program, Sharon Scott. I highly recommend that you check that out, because she talked about how she used my program and it really helped her a lot. So definitely document everything. The next thing is the E, emotions. Keep them in check. You're definitely going to want to keep your emotions in check. There's so many different reasons that you want to keep your emotions in check. I mean, for one thing is that they want to trigger you constantly. They love to see you squirm, so they get supply from it. And you really don't want to give them narcissistic supply, obviously, because that's no fun. I mean, they just get the satisfaction of seeing you go crazy, right? I mean, why do you want to do that? But then the next thing is that they use your reaction against you. They go, look, there's the crazy one. There's the one that's the problem. And they will use that against you in a number of ways. They use the emails against you, the texts against you. They may even be videotaping against you. They use the witnesses against you, whatever it is. So definitely keep your emotions in check. They use it for custody, so many different things. So definitely E, keep your emotions in check. And it doesn't help you when you're negotiating either if you're all over the place when it comes to settlements, because then you end up settling for things that you regret 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road. You're like, I didn't want to settle for that. Because a lot of times you're like, oh, I just ended up settling for that because I just wanted it to be done. I just wanted it to be over with. Or maybe you were just feeling pressured. You know, really try to keep your emotions in check. And by the way, if you're really struggling with that, because a lot of times when you've been dealing with a narcissist for a long period of time, you are in a trauma state, especially PTSD sometimes. I do have a partnership with BetterHelp. You can go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung. I do receive commissions on that. It doesn't cost you anymore. We have a partnership with them because I wanted to have a partnership with a service that we could trust, that we could recommend. If you are struggling, go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung so that you can get the help and support that you need if you're having trouble with your emotions and you're having trouble with trauma. So that's the E. The next one is always wear the white hat. That's the A. Always wear the white hat. And what do I mean by that? I mean by that in that you want to be the one, if you end up in front of the judge, which that's what this is about, you want to be the one where the judge is like, hey, This is the person that obviously is the good one. Let the narcissist be the one who's badly behaving. A lot of times it's so easy to fall into, hey, they're behaving badly. They're doing things wrong. They did it too. I can do it too. What happens though is then you have a situation where the judge is just like seeing like two kids that are fighting. So for those of you who are out there watching who have children and you have more than one, what happens is they just are like, oh, both of you just stop it. You know, they don't see that, oh, well, they started it or they're worse. They just see two people who just are fighting. So you want to be the one who's consistently not being in the mud with the other one. Because if you are the one who's what I call always wearing the white hat, who's not engaging, who didn't respond, who didn't get into it, and the other one is always the one who's constantly the badly behaved one, then it makes it really, really obvious who is the bad one. And it's kind of hand in hand with keeping your emotions in check, but it's even one step much, much further than that. You really, really want to be the one who's just always behaving, always doing the right thing. So just kind of imagine that the judge is sort of walking around with you and watching every single thing that you're doing. Always wear the white hat. That's the A. All right. So the next one is don't go anywhere alone. That's the D, the first D in Knock 'em Dead. And we're going through all the elements of what to do to beat a narcissist in court. So, you know, this is because they're going to say you followed them, you did this, you did that. They lie all the time. So they're constantly going to be saying that you were menacing, that you were threatening, that you did this with the kids, or that you touched somebody inappropriately, or whatever it is that they make up constantly. And then you end up having to defend against these ridiculous claims. So you want to make sure that you have people around as much as you possibly can. If you have children, for example, have your exchanges for custody at daycares, at schools, you know, at shopping plazas or places where people are around, because you just don't want situations where they can make things up about what's going on. And in that same vein, by the way, you're going to want to make sure that even depositions are videotaped if possible. And I have actually a whole video on how to be a narcissist in mediation. I talk about that in there, and you should definitely check out that video as well, because a lot of you who are trying to beat a narcissist in court are also mediating with a narcissist, and you should definitely check out that video as well. And I also do have a whole video where I interviewed Judge Lynn Toller. You guys should definitely check out that video too. She was the judge on divorce court for 17 years, and her video interview was very, very highly fascinating. So definitely check that out too. And if you guys are so ready to knock them dead, put knock them dead in the comments, because I'm so ready to help you knock them dead. And if you've been following along with how to beat a narcissist in court, and you've been following along with my acronym, you know there's one more D. The last D is decoys. It stands for decoys. And what I mean by decoys is you really do not want to give them your best offer or give them any of your best evidence or show them any of your cards or show them any of your hands until you're ready to unveil it in court or when you're ready. I mean, a lot of times while you're standing on the courthouse steps or even at lunch during the trial, they want to settle, they're ready to have settlement talks, or even maybe the eve before trial or a couple of days before, they're ready to have some settlement talks at that point or something. And you might be ready at that point as well, but you've got to have your strategy, your leverage, have anticipated, your focus on you, your position, that being on the offensive, my whole slay methodology. At that point, you do not give them your best offer. You do not show your best evidence. You decoy the whole thing until you are so ready to go. Basically, the way I look at it is you're building an invisible fence around them until you turn on the lights and they realize, oh my God, I'm totally pinned in. At that point, they have no choice but to resolve the issue with you or resolve the issues with you. So you're appearing weak, you're feigning ignorance, you know, oh, I don't know, I have no idea. Let them think that they're winning. Let them go all crazy on you. Allow them to go off. A lot of times, that's good for you. It's hard, I know, because you don't want them to get away with anything a lot of times during the case. But sometimes, if you have an ongoing case, it's good to let them screw up, because those little battles that show that they're screwing up help you to demonstrate to the judge who they actually are. So let them do that, you know, because then you can show patterns that they aren't doing what they're supposed to do, show patterns that they're liars, show patterns that they are bad parents or terrible with money or whatever it is that you need to show. It actually ends up helping you in the end, or that they have anger issues or whatever it is. So that definitely helps you. Sometimes it's really, really good to feign that you're weak, feign that you're ignorant. A lot of times, by the way, you can pretend like there's a particular thing that you really, really want, and it's not the thing that you really, really want, because then, you know, they go after that, you know, because they're going to go after the thing that they think that you really, really want, right? So let them go after that particular thing, right? When you become fearless against narcissists, when you no longer have that fear against narcissists, I know what it's like. And what happens when you no longer have fear against narcissists? Well, there's so many different things that happen when that power dynamic shifts. And I've seen it happen so many times, but it's a gradual process, okay? Because, you know, they're in it for the supply. People think they're in it to win it. They're not in it to win it. They're in it for the supply. They're only in it for the supply. And they're in it for many different forms of supply. And one of the things that I have to explain to people a lot of times is that when you go into the discard phase of the relationship, they really actually shift the form of supply that they've been getting from you. Okay, so you understand, right, that there have been the different phases of the relationship. They start off with the whole love bombing thing, you know, that charm, which is all really just to get that supply out of you in the first place. They want to get as quickly as possible to the next phase so that they can start getting the supply out of you as fast as possible. And so as fast as possible, they want to get to the next phase, which is the devalue phase. But it's really more to start exerting control over you, because they want to start showing you that they're powerful, and they want to start letting you know that they're in control of you. How they do that is devaluing you in some ways and letting you know that you are under their thumb. And they also are testing you in that devaluing phase. Okay. So part of the ghosting and the devaluing and all of that is to test you to see how you react when they do those kinds of things. Are you going to be a good source of supply for them? So then, when you start to pull away, they're coming back just, oh, no, I don't want you to go because I need you. Leaving them is actually the worst thing that you could possibly do. They have a very, very, very fragile ego. You're really there to serve that need for supply for them. So then when you enter into that discard phase and you actually do start to want to leave them, they want you to be afraid of them. They want you to fear them. And so then when you do start to leave them, they're afraid of that. They don't want you to leave them because they want you to be afraid of them. They want you to fear them. So now it happened. You've been fully conditioned. So you start to leave them. They go into their tantrum phase. Everything that they have done to control you throughout the relationship, they're going to get worse on. They're going to start to collapse, go crazy. And if you want to know more about what happens when the narcissist starts to collapse, you can definitely check out my video on the narcissist collapse. Not pretty. Definitely not pretty. So they start going crazy. They don't want you to leave. So when you do start to leave, now, they start grasping. They go into all their phases of, whatever they were doing in the first place. Now, when you do start to leave, they're going crazy, right? So smear campaigns, flying monkeys, all of that. And then in the middle of a divorce, by the way, it's the worst, depending on what kind of narcissist you're dealing with. It could be covert, malignant, grandiose, but they're not providing documents. They're using the court system as a sword. They might only provide a certain amount of documents. They're hiding money. They might be manipulating text messages, manipulating evidence. They might be tampering with witnesses, evidence, lying to the court system, using the children as pawns in the whole thing, suddenly interested in having the children half the time, trying to get the children to be against you. I mean, whatever it is that they need to do, right? Now you finally are getting past all of that and you start to see through them. And you're on the other side of that, and you start to realize how strong you actually are. And you start to really realize how pathetic they actually are. And you start to realize how strong you actually are. You start to realize that you are actually the stronger one. And you've gotten on the other side of seeing how you've actually been able to slay this beast. You will be so shocked at how they behave. They're going to be avoiding you. They don't want to go anywhere near you. And by the way, they do trade forms of supply. I started to mention that. So whatever form of supply they were getting from you in the relationship, whether it was money, services, sex, you were doing stuff for them, they trade that during the discard phase for manipulating you, making you crazy. People think they just want to win. They don't just want to necessarily win because they trade that for driving you absolutely insane. And that's why these cases never settle, because they love jerking you around. But when you don't fear them anymore, that's when they don't actually want to have anything more to do with you because you're no longer a good source of supply. And by the way, that's the type of person that the narcissist most respects, the person who doesn't fear them. So I want you to write in the comments right now, no fear, because that's your goal. That's your goal. Your goal is no fear. So for those of you who are ready to go there, I want you to subscribe to this channel right now. Subscribe, hit that notification bell if you haven't done that already. And make sure that you like this video and share it for others who need this content and need this empowerment, because it is time that we all have no fear against narcissists, right? All right. So let's talk about ways to defeat that narcissist, or the signs that you have defeated that narcissist. Actually, like, okay, you're negotiating with them and you're trying to figure out like how it's going. Are you close? Have you defeated them? Do you think that you're kind of on the way to defeating them? Because sometimes it's maybe hard to tell because they don't want you to know, obviously. I mean, they want it to look like they're winning at all costs and at all times, and they're never going to let on. I mean, even if they're like losing badly and things aren't going their way, and you're like showing them evidence that things aren't going their way, they're still going to say, I'm winning, it's going my way. It totally is. I mean, because that's how they've gotten along in life all along. You know, you can show them, hey, you know, look, these text messages show that you've been cheating. And nope, that's not what that says. That's how they get along. And I mean, I was actually just talking to one of my private clients recently, and she was telling me that she really appreciated one of my recent videos, which was 4 signs that the narcissist is losing control, which you can check out yourself if you'd like. And she said she loved that video because she was like, okay, like a lot of times, you know, she was saying, I'm afraid, I don't want them to lose control. I'm afraid of doing things that are going to make them lose control. And I don't want that to happen. But actually, she could see that that meant that she was starting to get there, that she was starting to make headway, that she was starting to cover ground, that she was getting closer to her goal of where she wanted to be. So that it was actually okay that in this case, she was dealing with a husband, but you know, sometimes you're dealing with a business partner. I've actually dealt with quite a few situations where people are dealing with maybe a family member in a probate situation, something like that. But it's okay if they're actually starting to lose control, because that means that they are showing signs of being defeated as well. And so you don't necessarily need to fear that. And also remember that they have conditioned you. They have conditioned you to believe that they are winners, that you don't know what you're doing, that you don't know how to think, that they do, that they're smarter, that you can't trust your thoughts, that you can only trust what they think. They've really conditioned you to believe that. And a lot of times, you know, your thoughts, things that you think are actually your thoughts, are actually thoughts that they have conditioned you to believe. Okay. So 6 signs that you're starting to defeat that narcissist. Number 1 is they're going to start love bombing you again. They're going to start coming back. So, you know, what happens is they start going back to that well of things that worked for them in the past. You know, they don't have a whole lot of tricks in their arsenal. They have their things that worked for them. So they go back to whatever it was that worked for them in the past. I mean, they have these patterns, they have these playbooks that worked. And that's why, you know, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you know, when you start to study what they're like, they're pretty predictable in the sense that you kind of can tell how they're going to behave, even though it's pretty awful, but you can pretty much tell how they're going to behave. So they'll start off kind of small, you know, and then they'll kind of work up to the things that, you know, when it's really bad defeat. Okay. So, you know, the love bombing might be the first kind of sign. Then the next thing is, okay, that didn't work, so let me go to the next thing. And that's when they start to get a little bit more desperate. So they start to flood you. They start to flood you with the text messages, show up at your house, show up at your office. You might start to see some crazy texts at this point. You might start to see some, you know, little undertones of not so nice texts, or maybe some even like threatening sort of language in the communications that you're receiving. So that, you know, it's starting to ramp up just slightly. You know, you're starting to feel that heat rise because they're starting to feel, you know, like it's coming. All right, so that's number 2. Number 3 is they start saying and doing all sorts of weird things. Like this is where you start to see like where they kind of start to get like a little bit desperate, where they start to, you know, get a little bit crazy. And so sometimes you'll start to see them just say weird things like, okay, where did that come from? Okay. They get a little bit outlandish sometimes. And so that's, you know, how it kind of starts. Like they get a little bit crazier, crazier. And until they're just, you know, full crazy and into collapse, and they've just become undone. And, you know, by the way, the mini series with Hugh Grant and doing great example of that whole thing. And I actually did a whole video on that if you want to check it out. Really great example of that whole thing. And so, okay, so those first 3 are all about them. It's all about the narcissist themselves. And so those are all signs that you've defeated the narcissist, and that's about the narcissists themselves. So the last 3 I want to kind of focus on signs you've defeated the narcissist. I want to focus on you, signs that you've defeated the narcissist, but focusing on you, because that's really when you know that you've defeated the narcissist, because you feel it on this side of the fence. All right. So number 4 is, you know that you've defeated the narcissist because you're no longer emotionally triggered. It's like they say things that normally in the past would have gotten you all like upset. It's like, you know, Superman with the bullets that just pop off your chest, or Wonder Woman, they just like went right off your wrist, and you're like, did somebody say something? I thought I heard something, but nothing. I got nothing. It didn't even like faze me at all. Nothing. Like when you're not emotionally triggered by that at all, you know you've actually defeated the narcissist. Okay. That's number 4. Number 5 is you get what you want. You get what you want in the negotiation, but you've taken your ego out of it. What do I mean by that? That means that you've ethically manipulated the manipulator. They think they've gotten away with something. You've let them on to believe that they won, that they got something out of you, and you actually manipulated them into taking exactly what you wanted them to take. So, and you do your best Meryl Streep or Al Pacino or whatever it is, and you went, oh my God, I can't believe, oh, this is all terrible, you know, whatever. And because you took your ego out of it, because you know what, they have to feel like they won. And that's how it goes. It's okay. It's fine. That's going to be how it is. You know, you have to let them think it's their idea, or whatever it is. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, the last one is, this is the best one, really. And that is, you no longer have any fear. You no longer have any fear in interacting with them whatsoever. Not only it's no emotion, you have no fear in interacting with them. You receive emails from them, you see them, you talk to them, you have no fear. And I get so many emails from people who've done my programs, who've watched my videos, all the things that I've told you guys to do. And then you tell me that that's the miracle. Yeah, you've gotten the outcomes you wanted, all those things. But the miracle is that the fear has disappeared. All right, so let's talk about what happens with the narcissist realizes that life sucks without you. It's kind of a funny thing because, you know, I've dealt with narcissists in my life, unfortunately, which is why I have such a huge mission for this. I've dealt with them in my law practice, but I also dealt with them in my personal life. And so that's why I know and I understand the drama, trauma, and chaos they cause. And here's the narcissist paradox. That is that they treat you like crap, Like the whole time they're doing all kinds of horrible things to you, very abusive, mind games, passive aggressive, actually aggressive, the whole time. And then you are finally like running away from them and try to get the hell out of there just to like save your sanity and preserve your soul. And then they turn around and they go, oh, why did they leave? Oh, I can't actually live without them. I need them back, you know. And so what happens when they realize that life sucks without you? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you all of this, but I want you to know that you don't go back there. I mean, if you've successfully gotten the key, the golden ticket, and you're out of there and they're leaving you alone, thank Jesus and never look back. You know, that's where everybody wants to get to, honestly. I mean, you don't want them back in your space. They haven't changed, no matter what it is that they say, they haven't changed. So don't go running back to them. All right. So let me just say that at the beginning, like they haven't changed. They're not going to, regardless of what they say or do, just leave it alone. Okay. But now what's happened? You're gone. You're not coming back. They realize you're not looking back. You have wiped them from the CPU of your life, which is what I tell you to do all the time. And now you've actually taken away their source of oxygen. You've taken away their source of food. And that's what we call narcissistic supply. They need an endless amount of supply in order to feel validated, to feel alive. And if they're not going to get it from you in the form of adulation, or you slaving away, doing things for them and, you know, making them look good, prestige, you know, some form of value that way, then they're going to get it from you, from devaluing you, debasing you, treating you poorly. You know, they literally do get off on that. And so when they realize that you're not coming back and that source of supply isn't there anymore, they're going to go through these stages. They're going to go, it's almost like stages of grief, you know, denial, anger, bargaining, you know, and then maybe acceptance, but probably never really fully accepting. I heard it described one time that they want to keep all of their sources of supply almost like people save up jam or something for the winter or something, you know, like people who have jams and jellies and things, and, you know, or sauces or whatever for the winter. That's what they do. Like they you know, they have a source of supply over here, but they also want the source of supply over there, and they want it from over here. They really are supply whores. So they're hoping that you'll still be a source of supply for them, if not to, you know, bolster up their ego, at least to bang you around and manipulate you and you know, cause you drama, trauma, and chaos, at least to do that. I mean, here's the thing. They completely took you for granted while you were around. They treated you poorly. They thought it was funny when they got away with doing things with you. And yet they somehow thought that you'd always be around. They somehow thought that you'd, you know, keep allowing that to happen. I just think they don't think it through. They don't think forward and think, well, this person might actually not want to stick around if I treat them badly. Because there's another little paradox that's going on here, which is that they have this massive fear of abandonment. they don't want to be abandoned. They don't want you to actually leave. And they do happen to collapse, sometimes, which I definitely check out my video on that. What happens when a narcissist collapses? It ain't pretty. But so they have this fear of abandonment. But okay, so once you leave, at first, they're going to line up their flying monkeys. They're going to try to get everybody to triangulate because they're still getting supply from all of this, right? So let me show you how I can make you miserable. Let me show you how I can do all of these things to you, and line up people against you and make you jealous and all of this. So they're going to start with that. And then the next thing they're going to go into is try to retaliate against you. And try to, their rage is going to come out. And so they might try to, blow up your phone and text you 5,000 times and flood you with messages or stalk you. And they may desperately try to get you back through love bombing or hoovering. Like I said, they want to keep all forms of supply. And so they're going to try to figure out a way to get you back into that web. So they might even file lawsuits to get your attention, to try to scare you. You're not going to walk away from me so easily. And, you definitely want to check out my video on what happens when you go silent on a narcissist, by the way. But then they realize eventually you're not coming back. That's when they're going to struggle. They're not going to have remorse for you and the things that they did to you, but for themselves. Because at that point, they're going to realize, they loved that support that you gave them. They needed that. They needed your emotional support. They needed you to do the work for them or make them look good, or your whatever contributions you were giving them. Whether it's your money or your sex or your ideas or your prestige or whatever it was the reason why they attached themselves to you in the first place, they're going to realize that it's gone. And they're going to be, upset about that, but not because they miss you. It's because they're going to miss what you were doing for them. Remember, I always say they didn't attach themselves to you because you have so little value, even though that's how they treated you. They attach themselves because you have so much value. So then what they're going to start doing is they're just going to start continuing to watch you. They will always be watching you. They'll always be stalking your social media or trying to see what it is that you're up to. It's just so creepy. And by the way, if you think they're so creepy, give me a so creepy down in the comments. They're always watching you. I do have a video on that, by the way, like why the narcissist is always watching you, because they're so creepy like that. And they may begrudgingly, by the way, move on. They're going to try to find another source of supply. They have to slither on down the road and find another source of supply, because that's what they feed on. Otherwise, they don't feel alive. So they will go try to find another source of supply, but they're going to miss the supply they were getting from you, especially if it was really good. So they'll keep watching. They'll keep comparing. They'll look to see if you have something new or something better. They love to compare. Narcissists are big on comparing. And if you do have something better or bigger or whatever, it's totally going to kill them. They'll be super jealous. They will hate that, and they'll be stewing. But you will no longer care, right? Because it doesn't matter. Because as long as you care what they think or what they say or what they do, you're going to be completely tied to them still. And vibrationally, they're going to feel that. So wipe them from the CPU of your life. You no longer care. You've moved on. Just keep walking and do not look back.